here's a question for you. They left out your guy, Wan'Dale Robinson,
Yeah.
which is offensive.
Yeah.
Flat out offensive. But I love this question because I think this is going to be a conversation when the Patriots run through their mock draft simulators that Bill Belichick's talked about in the past. I'm not saying they're using PFF's mock draft machine
They
and
shouldn't,
going
because
through
it
it
still
like
doesn't
that.
have kickers.
Right. But they do run their own simulations. These are the types of conversations I believe that they have truly in the draft room, right? If we have the number one defensive player on our board in the first round and we take that guy, but we know we need a receiver, which one of this cluster of receivers do we like the best? So whether it's David Bell, Pickens, Metchie, or let's throw Wan'Dale in there too. Those four guys, I believe, would be in a cluster on the Patriots board where they would be happy with any one of those four wide receivers. But which one do you want them to pick the most and why?
So I'm out on Metchie. I'm out on Metchie, and it's nothing, you guys know me at this point. I'm an Alabama fan. I'd love to see Mac to Metchie or Mac to Jameson Williams. I just don't think you can wait a year. I don't think you can wait a year for your big wide receiver acquisition to make a difference. So if they didn't have the torn ACL, if they didn't have the torn ACLs, they'd be 1 and 2 on my board for the Patriots. They really would. But
yeah,
they can't be with this high of a pick. If you're talking about Metchie, maybe you're getting into the 90s, right? The 3rd round, 4th round, I'd bite. So we'll take him out. The thing for me with Wan'Dale Robinson, as much as I like him, and he is my draft crush on the offensive side of the ball.
Don't back off on it just because everybody's
well, here's the thing, and Evan, I texted this to you, so you know this is true.
Yeah.
And he's my draft crush on the offensive side of the ball. It's Quay Walker on the defensive side of the ball, and then Matt Arrays on special teams. But I think that Wan'Dale they still need the downfield guy.
Right.
And maybe that's as simple as changing Nelson Aguilar's role. But if they don't go out and get like Calvin Ridley, I still think David Bell or George Pickens is a better pick than Wan'Dale Robinson.
Right.
Can I lay out my master plan for you? I did this on the show with Murph earlier today because it involves this question.
Sure.
And I'd have to run the numbers by Miguel. I don't know exactly how realistic they are. There's a lot of ifs in here, but if you can make the ifs go your way, trade a second for Calvin Ridley, which is the reported asking price right now. Trade a second for Calvin Ridley. You then go out, you trade Isaiah Wynn for a late 2nd round pick, which I think you could do. That, by the way, is just about flush in terms of cap. You're down like $1 million. The difference because they're both on their 5th year option.
Right.
You then bring back Trent Brown, bring back Ted Karras. Use your 1st round pick. You take a tackle, Darian Kennard, Jackson. I'm blanking on his last name. The kid from Washington, Jackson Kirkland. You take one of those 2 tackles. That guy sits behind. You have Trent and Onwenu, your starting tackles. That guy sits behind him. You then use your 2nd round pick you got for Isaiah Wynn to draft Wan'Dale Robinson. Now you have 2 starting tackles, a 3rd guy waiting in the wings. You have your true X receiver. You have an explosive slot receiver to pair with Kendrick Bourne. Now you're in business on the offensive side of the football. I think if they put that offensive unit together, now we're talking. We're talking.
But can you answer the question directly? Because roundabout answer.
All right.
Which one of these names would you take out of this group?
Assuming they don't bring in a receiver in free agency or via trade, I don't know that much about David Bell. You were kind of texting me about him. He kind of flew under my radar this year. So
he's like a very serviceable NFL wide receiver, but he's nothing flashy.
So Malcolm Mitchell.
Some of his contested catches are flashy, but I'm so over the contested catch guy, right? Like whenever I talk about draft evaluations, I want to see strong hands. I want to see guys that can go up and get the ball or catch the ball outside their frame. I want to see guys that can finish through contact. But if you throw at me, oh, Evan, you got to watch David Bell. Watch this one-handed catch he makes. I'm out. Like that.
Well, that's Aaron Dobson,
right? Like like that can't be the only thing that is good about his tape. And David Bell's steady in every single way, but he's not good. He's not elite at any one thing besides maybe the ability to go up and make some good catches in contested situations.
So basically, he's a good complementary piece. He's a good secondary option, which good teams need. I just talked about that with the Chiefs, but the Patriots need a playmaker. Then give me George Pickens.
Yeah, I'm a George Pickens guy right now. Now, I still love the idea of John Metchie with Mac Jones. I know that it would probably have to wait a year, but nowadays with ACL rehab and surgeries and the way that they're able to get these guys so quickly back on the field, and the fact that pretty much everybody that has an ACL comes back and is fine now. Like there's not a whole lot of guys that pull a Dante Culpepper, right? That are just never the same dude anymore. That just doesn't happen anymore. So I just love the idea And I think it's so, such an easy comparison, and maybe it's lazy, but I can't help but look at what Burrow's doing with Chase and be like, if you put Mac with Metchie and a guy that he's thrown to, how many times between practice and in games at Alabama. And I know that behind the scenes, those guys work together a lot because Metchie wasn't starting initially, right? Just like Mac wasn't starting. So when they go 2-on-2, 2s-on-2s and stuff like that, and they run basic off to the side, Mac and Metchie was a connection then as well when he was behind Ruggs and Judy and all these other guys there at Alabama. I just love the idea of pairing him with a guy he's familiar with, because I think that eliminates so much of the chemistry that needs to be built between quarterback and receiver.
So let me ask you this: why Metchie over Williams? Because I would take, if we're going to go down that road, I'd take Jameson Williams.
Well, how much did Mac play with Jameson? I don't think much, right?
As much, the same year.
Okay,
and he wasn't starting either because they were behind Ruggs.
But Jameson was at Ohio State, right? So I don't remember Jameson Williams playing much with Mac, but maybe my memory is incorrect there, because last year they played so much with Smith, Waddle, Metchie was like their top three, right? So maybe Jameson mixed in.
Oh, I thought Jameson Williams had another year there. I just still think Jameson Williams is better, but again, I think a big part of the mistake with Harry, because and this is something I'm going to bring up a lot in the course of this offseason, the nature versus nurture thing. It's not just a play you're taking. You have to develop them and use them correctly. They botched. I don't want to say they bought. Let me rephrase that.
No, they botched it. You can say that.
Well, no, because it's not entirely. N'Keal Harry's
injuries, they botched it.
N'Keal Harry's first summer was a mess, right? They put him back in that Lions game when he had his hamstring issue, and then he was on IR and all of that. Even though Mac and Metchie have the chemistry, they're not the only two guys on the field, right? It's everybody else.
Yeah.
So you want to invest that highly, and we know how important that first summer is for NFL prospects.
I just think that maybe
you want to invest that highly in a guy who doesn't he's not going to have that first summer. It's
fair. I just think you can sort of bypass that due to Metchie's familiarity with the Bill O'Brien system now. That is probably has some overlap in what they are running at Alabama. I mean, Mac talked about the overlap, right, between Alabama and the Patriots offense, even under Steve Sarkisian. So I think there is some overlap there with the offensive systems, and there's obviously a ton of already natural chemistry. So I think you might be able to bypass the training camp, OTAs, camp thing with Joe. I get the hesitation. I get it.
Here's the thing. It's essentially a shortcut, right? You're trying to find a shortcut or a loophole to get a better receiver.
Because the Bengals did it with Jamar Chase. So but
here's the thing. They didn't take a shortcut. He was fully healthy. They took him 6 overall. They picked him over a generational tackle prospect.
Right.
That wasn't a loophole. That wasn't a shortcut. That was all your chips to the table. No shortcuts. No gimmicks.
Also not a great case study for people that think that the trenches are more important than elite.
The trenches will always be the most important part. If you can't block, the quarterback can't throw. That's basic football.
I mean,
Joe
Burrow was sacked 9 times in that game, Alex, and they still won.
And if the Titans kick a freaking extra point instead of that 2-point conversion.
All right. This is a whole other conversation.